Yeah, hello and good morning, everyone. Thanks a lot for joining and tuning into our webinar about the telco industry and about how companies, especially large companies, can turn data into business value. So before we dive into the details, a little bit of housekeeping. I would like to start by introducing ourselves a little bit. So my name is Florian Sieren. I'm based in Germany and heading the business development and sales activities in the DACH region. And with me today is my colleague Alexander, who has a more technical background. But having that said, Alex, why don't you share a couple of words about yourself and what you're up to? Yeah, Alex, I think we have some issues with your mic. Maybe you're still muted.
Yes, maybe not anymore. Please excuse me. Yes, exactly. Sorry. Yeah, let me quick introduce myself. My name is Alexander Direk-Lazov. I'm a cloud architect here at Keepler, and I basically cover the full customer journey together with our clients, starting from the cloud and data-driven journey, idea and strategy definition, up to the actual delivery of use cases. Welcome.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Alex. All right, so let's take a very quick look at the agenda, what we have prepared for you today. We have split the presentation and the webinar into two parts. So we will start by talking a little bit about the current trends in the telco industry, and then how a data strategy can help to turn data into business value. And we will go into more detail by also highlighting how data product teams can help to execute on a data strategy and actually help to implement use cases and data products. And then we will dive more into the hands-on part, and this is where Alex will present a couple of use cases linked to data and to the telco industry. We have identified two which we believe are quite interesting, quite interesting for the telco industry in general. If we have enough time and not too many questions, we will dive into a third one maybe, but that really depends on how things are going. Having that said, you will notice that we have a Q&A section also integrated into the webinar. So please feel free to ask questions at any point. Don't wait until we open the Q&A section. And that way our team can prepare the questions a little bit, and it will give us some time to prepare in between. So as soon as something is coming up, please drop it into the chat. All right, so before we dive into the details, just a couple of words about Keepler, what we do and what we're up to. We are a full stack analytics provider that is focused on building data products in the public cloud. And we are still a relatively young company. So we've been founded in 2018, but already have close to 200 employees at this point. So you can imagine that as a company, we are growing quite rapidly together with our customers. And so far, we've conducted around about 450 projects in various different industries. But one of the focus industries that we are deeply connected with really is the telco industry. And if you take a look at the bottom of the slide, you will find some of the large and some of our main clients that we are working with. So you can see that it's really cross-industry, but that there are some strong references from the telco industry. The middle part of this slide talks a little bit about how we have structured our capabilities. And you will notice that we that one of the core capabilities that we have is building a solid foundation for turning data into value. So we are focused on cloud governance and data governance. And then if we go along the customer journey or the typical route that we take with our customers, eventually we help them build data products that turn data into value. We are partnering with 3 large hyperscalers. So we are close friends with AWS, Google, and Microsoft, which I think shouldn't be too big of a surprise at this point. All right, so here we have mapped out some of the current trends that we observe in the telco industry, and I have to excuse because this slide is a bit wordy and there's a lot of things going on here, so we won't dive into all of the details, but I will just pick out 2 or 3 examples that might be interesting. And the underlying key message and key takeaway of this slide really is that no matter at which dimension of current trends and developments you're looking at, so from political, technological, to social and economic, the underlying or the common denominator always is data. It doesn't really matter which trend you take a closer look at. There's always either a direct or indirect way in order to address the challenges, but also the opportunities that are created by those developments by utilizing data. If I pick on one of the trends here, let's take a look at the political dimension maybe. One key trend that is impacting the telco industry there is linked to an increase in privacy regulation. And being based in Germany, I can tell you that this is something that is keeping up our customers at night quite a lot. So we expect that this is going to continue and that the regulation regarding privacy is going to increase going forward. And of course, this has a direct impact on how you have to work and to deal with your data, meaning that you have to have an appropriate structure and architecture in place that on the one hand enables you to comply with the regulations, but on the other hand also enables you to effectively work with the data. And there are some good practices in place in order to do that, which we have in one of the examples that Alex will share with you later. But yeah, this is just one aspect. If we switch to the environmental dimension, of course, energy consumption, CO2 emissions is a hot thing going on there. And of course, data centers and processing data on a large scale also has a high impact on energy consumption and on costs. So the more you can optimize your data infrastructure, the more you can improve your carbon footprint and the more you can lower energy consumptions. And there are various different examples linked to the other dimensions, which we are not going to dive into at this point. If you're interested in it, please reach out to us later and we can discuss in detail. But again, the underlying message here really is that in order to effectively address these trends and turn them into opportunities and revenue in the end, you have to have a solid foundation in order to work with your data. And the question, of course, this is pointing towards is, as a large organization, how do you do that, right? So if we know that data is the underlying foundation for increasing revenue and business value, well, what's the strategy and how can you achieve that? And this, of course, points to the term of data strategy, which is something that's been used quite frequently and a lot by our customers, but in the industry in general. And the point here is that it is quite difficult to find a very narrow definition for the term data strategy, which is why we have created this overview that consolidates the different elements and aspects that are linked to a data strategy. And the way we define the term is that we want to create an information ecosystem, which you see on the right-hand side here. And the overall aim of this information ecosystem is to help companies to make more informed and evidence-based decisions. And the way to achieve this is first to start by understanding as an organization that data is an asset that can be turned into value. That's something that, yeah, we observe with a lot of customers, which is, it's not always the case, even though there is a change in mindset and in the corporate culture that we're observing right now. Still, it is not the case that especially the large corporations out there realize that data is an asset that they have to work with. So the way you transform the data into value goes from data management to data exploitation. And without diving into too much of a detail here, But the key elements we have to data management are, for instance, metadata, and also creating architectures and foundations that enable you to work with the data in a compliant way. And then on the data exploitation dimension, you have elements like running simulations that enable you to analyze different decisions and how they're going to impact your business. We, of course, have the parts linked to reporting and implementing maybe machine learning algorithms in order to automate and improve the decision-making and exploitation of data. But yeah, to sum it up, you see there is really a lot of different elements linked to a comprehensive data strategy, and it's all about creating an information ecosystem that ultimately enables companies to improve their decision-making. So here are some underlying facts why it is definitely a good advice to invest and to create a data strategy. Here is a study summarized, which was done by IDC and Forrester, and they were looking at the Fortune 1000 companies, and they were analyzing how investments into data strategy and into working with data in general affected the growth and the companies. And what they found is that those companies who have invested 10% into data and improving data infrastructure, on average, they had a growth of around about 30% and an additional revenue of 65 million. And there are some other KPIs, but I think what's clear at this point is that those companies who take working with data and turning data into value seriously, and if they're willing and ready to invest in it, then this definitely has a measurable positive impact on the business. Now, on this slide, we want to go a little bit further into how you can actually translate a data strategy into practice. And what we like to do is we like to communicate this in 3 different steps. And the first step is about creating a data product mindset within the organization. So a data product is another term that's been used quite heavily in the industry right now. And we see that there are mainly 3 different aspects to this. So on the one hand, the organization has to think, has to adopt the data product mindset, meaning that Alex, could you maybe take over? I'm having an issue here.
Right. Yes, no problem. Sorry. Yeah, no problem. So basically, the data product mindset is to treat your data as a product, right? So you want to encapsulate the development of business value through data projects by handling it as a product. Once you think this way, you will realize that what you need to do to drive forward the cloud and data-driven adoption through a company is to create a so-called self-service data platform that will basically facilitate and accelerate the development of data products independent from where you are in your company structure right now, right? So what you want to build is a cloud and data platform that is providing your data product teams the necessary tools in order to create the data products. Exactly. So you want to cover back, Florian? Or
yeah, sorry for that. There was
no worries.
So, where did you left off? Did you cover the?
Yeah, I covered this page, I think. Yeah.
All right, perfect. Yeah. So then let's switch over to the next part. This is about how organizations can structure their data platform and data product teams in order to gain the maximum value of working with data products and implementing them. And the slide on first view maybe looks a little bit complicated, but the key takeaway here is that there are some well-established and proven practices in order to implement different data product teams in different domains of your organization in a way that you can implement the use cases and the data products across the different business units. And the way we do that is usually by structuring it or structuring the projects in data domains and then in the different horizontal layers of an organization that we have. So in the telco industry, that could be, for example, different local organizations, different countries maybe. And then we would have a data platform team that oversees the underlying cloud data platform architecture. And then in the vertical sections, in the data domains, you have specialized data product teams who are taking care about the maintenance, the further development, and all the aspects linked to a data product. All right. So having that said, let's switch over to Alex, who will share some details on some more hands-on use cases with us.
Exactly. So what I will do is I will cover you through a selection of use cases that we have identified with our clients through basically across the full value chain of telco. So what you see here on the slide is basically the value chain of telco companies subdivided into two parts. The left part is the NetCo, which is basically the part of the business that covers the physical infrastructure for telco companies, basically related to fiber networks, towers, things like that. On the right side, you see the ServCo, which is basically the non-physical part of the business, basically the B2C and B2B business mainly, providing the end customers the services, right? And through this full value chain, we have identified and also implemented here at Keepler several use cases. On the left side, for example, the things that we are going to cover today is in the area of, or the use case is in the area of Vision AI, which is here the number one, the identification of damages and power lines. But other use cases for the left part for the NetCo operations could be, for example, risk estimation for workforce planning, or also demand forecasting, or simulations of network environments. And on the right side, typical use cases here, for example, in a contact center, is the application of natural language processing, for example, to analyze recorded voice calls. This is something that we are going to cover on the next slides too. So yeah, without further ado, let me cover the first use case. So for this client, you have to understand that this client had power lines, towers, right? And in order to maintenance them, they had specific teams, technician teams, that needed to drive to every of this tower, then obviously securely climb up the tower and visually with their own eyes inspect the situation of the maintenance of the tower. So things they were searching there were corrosion areas, or for example misplacements of specific components in insulators, or cracks in insulators. And to guide this process and to make it more secure for the workers, and also to shorten the cycle that you need, the time that you need, we have developed a vision model that was deployed on drones, and these drones were able to fly up and then do the identification of these components like corrosion and misplacement, or maybe detection of cracks, which again then leads to that the team doesn't have to actually climb up the tower, right? And which is a way more secure situation. So what you see here on the right side are basically pictures from the drones that fly up and made pictures of the towers. And like you can see here, you see here corrosion area, and the model was able to detect the corrosion areas, and based on the, let's say, the size of the corrosion area, then you can judge whether this is needs to be maintained or not. Other things here is the misplacement or the measurements of cracks for insulator parts. So the take-home message here is basically that Vision AI and Vision AI use cases, data products, can be used on the NetCo side for basically all physical and visual detection tasks in objects like cables, poles, surfaces, and insulators, right? And the model is usually capable of identifying a region of interest for or to detect an object, create a pixel mask where it highlights the area of interest like corrosions, or measure objects or detect objects like cracks. Another typical use case now on the Servco side is the application of natural language processing. So for this client, the idea was to improve the quality of the customer service by analyzing the content of the calls to their service center. And what we have designed for them is, again, a data product that analyzes the calls, classifies them into groups, and also classifies the sentiment of the calls, which you can see basically here on this side. On the right side here, the second largest bar that you can see here shows the following. First of all, we have about 2,000 calls in a group contract. So from all of these calls and groups that we had about 2,000 calls that were classified with the intent to ask questions about the current contract of the client, right? So this was the first basically business value of the model, to classify the number of calls related to a specific topic. And the colors that you see here basically indicate that the amount of calls that had a positive or a negative business intent. Okay, so green areas indicate that the clients were calling in order to extend their contract or maybe even book additional options, where blue areas are more of a neutral intent, where the client was just calling in order to ask information about the current contracts without the intent to extend the contract or cancel the contract. And finally, reddish and orange areas here indicate the amount of calls that had a negative business sentiment in mind. Basically, maybe the client had a complaint or wanted to terminate the contract. And applied for telcos, it's obvious that we can use natural language processing in order to analyze voice calls, but it's not only for voice data or audio data. It can be also used, for example, to classify and process unstructured documents like scans or emails. And yes, this is basically the use case for that. Then I would like to cover with you a use case regarding forecasting. Okay, forecasting is a very general use case. It applies as well for the left side, for the NetCo, but also for the Servco. Basically, forecasting can be done everywhere. In this particular use case, we have developed a forecasting solution for demand forecasting of bicycle service stations. And the challenge here was not only to develop a model that is doing the forecasting, but to do it for over 500 different stations, right? So we needed to industrialize the development and deployment, and obviously also the training of machine learning models in order to predict the usage for a high variety of different stations. On the right side here, you see the typical infrastructure used for such use cases. That's why I say it's a very general use case, so which can be applied to basically every forecasting situation. So we have here, in this case of the bicycle, we had third-party APIs that were used as external data sources. Information that was retrieved were like, what is the weather today or maybe tomorrow? What is the day that I want to predict? Is it a weekday or is it even a holiday? And information like that was fed into the system, the solution that was implemented in this case on AWS. And so here, this is the storage and transformation layer. And on the right side, you see then basically the analytics layer. And here is exactly where the prediction happens, right? So, and in order to integrate this forecasting model or this forecasting solution with the IT landscape of our clients, we have used REST APIs that enabled to, for example, to build on top of this solution a web application that displays the forecasting, or to integrate it into automated business processes. So the take-home message here is basically that forecasting can be applied through the full customer value chain, or the value chain of the client or of telcos. For example, for mobile data consumption forecasting, network workload forecasting, and other similar forecasting operations. Exactly. Finally, what I would like to cover with you is the most basic, let's say that, use case, which is reporting and BI layers. Okay. So, and however, this use case we identified, especially for telcos, one of the biggest challenges here are privacy regulations. So how do you want to build let's say, a lakehouse architecture or an analytics layer, okay, an analytics solution on data that contains personal identifiable information, PII, right? Especially in Germany with GDPR, this is a very high requirement from our clients that we identified, especially for telcos. And the idea here is to create a de-identification solution that you use when you're ingesting your data to the cloud. And this de-identification solution detects the personal identifiable information of your data estate and then removes this personal identifiable information, either through completely removing it or to create like a masked value, like a hash based on the data. However, in both cases, the data becomes completely untraceable to a single person, okay? Which basically means from data that contains PII and is under the legislation of GDPR requirements, you can transfer this data without losing value to completely anonymized or de-identified data, and can use it for analytics applications without worrying actually anymore about GDPR. And for this, we have basically developed a de-identification framework for each of the major clients, which is AWS, Google, which you can see here, and Azure. Without going too much here into technical detail, it consists of data ingestion, identification of personal identifiable information, masking of that information, and completely removing any connection from the de-identified data to actual personalized data. And with this, you can unlock your full data potential for general analytics and reporting layers without worrying about GDPR. Yes, so that's basically it from my side. And if you have any questions regarding the use cases, I'm happy to answer them.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Alex. So I think we received some questions in the comment section, and maybe I will just moderate it a little bit. So one of the questions is, how are we approaching projects and use cases? How do the first stages maybe of collaborating with our clients look like?
All right. Yeah, I'm happy to answer this question. So, so what you need to understand is that our clients have usually two goals. Okay, one is the overarching goal, which is to drive the cloud and data-driven adoption through the enterprise, and the second underlying goal are some specific use cases, some identified use cases, right? And this one goes hand in hand. So when we are creating or scoping our projects with the clients, what we do is we try to create small, maybe 2 to 4 a month iterations where we try to deliver value and create a product increment for both of these goals. So in the first iteration with our client, what we usually do, of course, depending on the cloud and data maturity of the client, is we develop a first version of a data platform, self-service data platform, up to a certain automation level that is required in order to develop the use case. This is the first iteration. In the second iteration, we again try to increase the automatization level of the self-service data platform, so the development of other use cases can be accelerated and facilitated easier. Okay, so the idea is to try to automate and abstract as much of the underlying infrastructure with each iteration in order to allow your data product teams, no matter in which department they are, to develop their own products, data products.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Yeah, so I think also in the interest of time, maybe let's close the webinar at this point. So again, thank you very, very much for attending. And if you have any questions, I think we'll have another slide where we will show our email addresses and contact details. So we are always happy to have like a loose discussion and exchange with you. So do not hesitate to reach out if you want to dive into more of the details and things that we've presented here today. So yeah, until then, thank you very much and goodbye.
Thanks everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.